Gosh, it's going to be a busy day, Yvonne. We can see that things will kick off with the procession known as the King's Procession, where the King and Queen will travel in an Australian-made coach. That's the Diamond Jubilee State Coach from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey, which is one of the most significant religious buildings in London and has been the home of British coronations for about 1,000 years. So Charles will be the 40th British monarch crowned in Westminster Abbey. Then the ceremony itself, we expect will be shorter than Queen Elizabeth's ceremony, but it will still take between 1 and 2 hours and will involve multiple stages, from a recognition where the Archbishop of Canterbury will basically present Charles to the people, basically to assure people that this is not an imposter, that this is the monarch they're expecting. There will be an oath that the King swears, which is allegiance not just to the government and to rule according to the will of Parliament, but in communion with the tenets of the Anglican Church. There'll also be an anointing where the Archbishop of Canterbury will anoint him with holy oil. There'll be the presentation of the regalia, the crown, the scepter, the orb. And then there will be an homage paid to the king. And for the first time, we know that it won't just be the heir to the throne, namely Prince William, making the Pledge of Allegiance, but the Archbishop of Canterbury will call upon people within and beyond the Abbey to, if they wish, swear allegiance to the monarch. There'll then be a communion, there'll be a similar crowning of Queen Camilla, and then there'll be another procession in another coach, the Gold State Coach, back to Buckingham Palace, where there'll be the traditional balcony appearance, and then finally a flypast by Royal Air Force jets. So a very busy, big day tomorrow.
And that was just a quick summary too, wasn't it? You did really well there. Now, it's been
I didn't tell you about the entire weekend that they've planned.
Oh,
they've got
my
a whole
goodness.
weekend
Lots of parties, I'm sure, afterwards. Oh, just that moment of anointment, it won't be televised, I understand, because it's the most sacred part of the ceremony. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And they've actually created a new, actually quite beautiful needlework screen, which has got on it leaves which represent the individual countries of the Commonwealth, including, of course, Australia. And that screen will be what viewers see, rather than the king himself, who will be anointed by the Archbishop behind the screen.
Fascinating. Now, it's been 70 years since the last UK coronation. How different will this one be?
Look, in some ways, those steps I discussed in the ceremony are not that different from what the Queen Elizabeth went through in 1953. But in other ways, the feel of the coronation will feel quite different. It's much smaller. So instead of almost 8,000 people packed into Westminster Abbey, as in 1953, there'll be closer to 2,000 people. It will also be a more multicultural event. Charles, we know, is very keen to show that he's a modern progressive monarch. There will be representatives of other faith groups present in the Abbey. And indeed, one of the lessons will be read by the British Prime Minister, who is himself of Indian Hindu background. As well, volunteers have been invited as guests to the Abbey. So it's going to be less sort of tiaras and aristocrats and more ordinary people as guests in the Abbey.
Any notable absentees?
Well, I can think of at least two. Obviously, many people will be thinking about Meghan Markle, who is not attending the coronation. And as well, Prince Andrew's former wife, Sarah Ferguson, was not invited to the service. And also President Joe Biden, following a tradition that all US presidents have actually observed, will not be attending the ceremony. Someone who will also be in many people's minds, I think, Yvonne, is the late Princess Diana. And of course, I think when people see in particular Prince William, but also Prince Harry, who is attending, albeit without his wife, many people will be thinking about the woman who many expected to have been by King Charles's side as he's crowned tomorrow.
Well, Camilla will be crowned Queen. She has been Queen Consort. What kind of Queen do you think she will be?
I think Camilla will begin, as she has already shown us, as Charles's wife, to be completely devoted to her husband and to the king, and to really have shown the world that she's transformed herself from the person who was that third member of the relationship between Charles and Diana. And I think Camilla has worked extremely hard to resuscitate her public persona and to win a lot of support by people, particularly in Britain, for her really sincere engagement with charitable causes, for example. I think many people who were initially skeptical now accept her as the Queen.
And Cindy, are a lot of protesters expected to be parked outside? How much security is in place? A lot, I imagine.
There's an enormous amount of security. This is probably the biggest security operation that we've seen in a royal event, probably even greater than last year's Platinum Jubilee and funeral arrangements. Look, there's been a lot of contention about this, Yvonne. The group Republic, which is a British group which is promoting Britain becoming a republic, has been warned about not disrupting proceedings. And they, in turn, have accused the government of being heavy-handed about this. So there's quite a lot of tension around that. I think we will see protests. We know that protests are planned, but I think they will remain peaceful.
And I just have to ask you one question finally. What will you be watching out for the most tomorrow? How will you be marking the occasion?
Yes, as a historian, I'm very interested in how this ceremony varies from previous coronations. And of course, it's the only coronation I've been able to ever watch. So I'll be watching closely the oath that Charles swears. I'm also going to be paying particular attention to the music, listening to both traditional pieces like Handel's Zadok the Priest, which has been performed at coronation since the 18th century, but also really interested to hear the new pieces that Charles has commissioned, and also interested in the Greek Orthodox music, which he has asked for to be played in memory and honor of his late father, Prince Philip, who was connected with the Greek royal family.
Really interesting to talk to you, Dr. Cindy McCreery. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Yvonne.